Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin here. Mike, it's a big Monday. It's an inauguration day, MLK Day, and also national championship tonight for college football. Who you got before we start?
Ohio State.
Me too. I think so as well. We'll see. I'd like to see Notre Dame make it a ball game and maybe make it a good one.
Don't like Notre Dame.
Okay, never. Well, do you like Ohio State?
More than Notre Dame.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lot of sentiment of people out there right now. Well, let's talk about something else, shall we? Arkansas basketball, which I know a lot of Hog fans don't like right now either because they continue to struggle when it comes to SEC play. Our first question is from KY Hog, who asks, how am I supposed to be positive when our basketball team can't win a conference game? I live around Kentucky fans. They are driving me crazy right now. And KY Hog, that makes sense. Kentucky Hog, like that
I know the guy. He lives in Kentucky, and he's surrounded by these people, and they're annoying anyway. And now they're doubly annoying. So he has my sympathy. Look, everybody has to handle this in their own way. I'm not telling somebody what kind of fan to be. I will give an example because I've got two friends, and I don't know if this is weird or not, because I don't know if you have. I have these two longtime friends that don't really know each other. Do you have friends like that? Or do your friends
don't really know each other, like acquaintances?
They might know who they are, but they don't hang out together. I'm usually either hanging out with one of them or the other one, not both of them.
And they know of each other.
I don't know. I don't
Okay.
talk. They don't talk about the other one.
Okay.
Because they're very different people.
Okay.
Okay. So one of them is what I would call a typical internet fan. He gets on and says, your check should be fired. They should take their money back from him, tell him to go away, tell these players to go away, start all over, go get somebody else. NIL is the wrong way to go, and all this stuff. And I was talking to him the other day, and I said, you know how crazy all that is? I mean, it's just over the top. And he says, I know. I said, well, do you really believe that stuff? And he says, probably not. I said, well, then why do you post it? And he said, because it makes me feel better. And I'm not saying that everyone that does that, that's the motivation, but I do think it helps explain a lot of the extreme opinions. They're just people that are really mad and they need to blow off steam, just like you would go to a psychiatrist.
It's like therapy.
Yeah, therapy. And so if it helps you to do that, fine. The problem that I explained to him is, you could affect players, you could affect the coaches, you could create an impression that, that everything's awful and all that stuff does need to happen. And he says, well, if it does, but that's not my intent. So then I got this other friend, and he said, I'm actually much more critical when a team's succeeding. He said, when Muss was having those good teams, like they'd go to the Elite Eight or they'd go to the Sweet 16, he said, I'd get really mad and criticize them online for not advancing to the Final Four. When are you going to get to the Final Four? What are you doing? What's the missing piece? You were good enough to be there. And I said, well, why do you do that? And he said, because they're good enough that me saying that it's not going to change anything. It might motivate them a little bit in the next year, or it might motivate Muss or something, but they can take the criticism because they're good. He said, I'm not going to do that with this team because this team is fragile. They don't need people piling all over them. There are reasons why they're struggling right now, and I'm going to back off. And I said, well, what do you do? And he said, I hang around more with my wife and kids and grandkids. He said, I go hang out with people he said, I have friends that aren't really sports fans. And I go hang out with them and we talk about other stuff, politics or other things. And so he says, I do that stuff. I just get away from it. I think some fans probably right now are kind of shifting all their emphasis to baseball.
A lot of people are, yeah.
Because, and hopefully that'll turn out better, because if it doesn't, I don't know where they go after that. But the point is that you have to handle it in your own way. Do what you have to do, I'm not going to lecture you on how to handle this.
No, absolutely. And you just described two sides, two kind of extremes of the fan base, I feel like, on one side and the other side. KY Hog, I feel for him, though, because Kentucky fans...
Oh, it's worse for him.
Well, because here's the thing. I understand how annoying Kentucky fans are. I don't care. There are Kentucky fans that even if you're posting about Arkansas football, Arkansas gymnastics, Arkansas softball, baseball, they will be in the comment section telling you how Coach Cal is a dud and we were right and ha ha ha, na 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 boo boo. And I'm going, this is an Arkansas football post. Why are you here? This is not even about Coach Cal. So I understand.
I think
where
hands down, they are the most annoying internet fan base in all of college athletics.
Absolutely. They take the cake for me. Absolutely.
And it's not all of them because, look, I've seen some of these people post, look, I liked him when he was here. I don't want to trash him.
Yeah.
I wish him good luck unless he plays us. I'm not mad at him. And there are some like that. I just think those kinds of people tend to post less on the internet, and the angry people tend to post more.
Yeah, and you see the angry people because it incites something in you. Sometimes I've seen good comments and they just get lost and buried, and you're like, oh, well, there are people that think good things. Right. It's hard to right now. I'm a negative Nancy about this team, so I feel you guys. Hammerhead28 wants to know, is the Arkansas basketball team the bad news Hogs? Calipari really needs to find his Amanda and Kelly. Too much emphasis is placed on John L. Davis, Rudy Stein to be the answer. Boogie is as close to Amanda that we have, and we need Adu or Thero to be the Kelly.
Well,
he's talking about bad news Bears, right?
And I never watched it. You've seen it, but it's been so long, you don't know what he's talking about.
I can't remember. Are you kidding me? I can't remember any characters' names, guys. I know it's about a Little League baseball team.
Yeah. Here's the thing I would say about that. I do know that in that movie, they overcome and they win.
Yeah, they do.
That's not happening with this team, okay? So there's a flaw right there. And the answer for why they're not playing well, they need to stop playing John L. Davis and play Boogie more and go to Thero. They are going to Adu and Thero, and Boogie is playing a lot. And there are a lot of people out there that believe that John L. Davis, the only way he's ever going to improve is if you just stick him out there and let him not score, and then all of a sudden he'll get into a rhythm. Now, I don't know if that'll happen or not, but the issue is that whether that's right or correct or wrong, he's going to probably play more because Boogie Fland is hurt, and he may sit out a couple of games or more. And Alyssa was looking at some of his stats, and it's not going to be a slam dunk if he's out that they're going to improve. They'll probably go backwards.
Yeah.
Because that guy's pretty good.
Yeah, he leads the SEC in assist to turnover ratio. He is second in the SEC in assists. He is first in the SEC, I think tied for first in minutes played or average minutes played, right? And he's tied for first with DJ Wagner. So it's going to be interesting what happens with this team moving forward because you thought it was bad now.
Could get worse.
Could get worse. I also want to say to Hammerhead28, maybe I need to go back and watch Bad News Bears.
Then it'll make more sense.
And then it'll make more sense. So I'm going to say that right here, right now. I'm going to go watch that movie this weekend, okay? And then we'll get back to you. Hog Redneck asks, I would like your take on what's wrong with this team. To me, they don't have enough older players, and the younger players are good, but not really great, and they're really inconsistent.
Yeah, I would go along with that analysis. I think that's pretty accurate. Look, if you look at some of the teams that are really playing well right now in the SEC, they've got, what some people call glue guys that you build other players around. For instance, Alabama's got Mark Sears, and he's a transfer, but this is his second year here, and he was good enough. Probably they thought he would come out last year, and he didn't, and he came back, and that's a big addition. And they've got 2 or 3 other guys that are transfers, but it's not their first year.
Yeah, Grant Nelson as well.
And then you've got, they're playing a couple of freshmen, but they're not like Arkansas's freshmen in that they're surrounded by guys that have been there before in that program. They know Nate Oates. They know what he's expected. And they're in their second year, and they're playing better. I think you could look at a situation like Missouri, where they didn't win an SEC game last year, and look where they are right now. They're one of the better teams in the SEC. They're ranked way too low, in my opinion, right now. They're very good.
Well, they weren't ranked for a really long time. Did they crack the top 25 this
I don't
week?
know, but they're up among the best teams in the SEC.
Every week
if you watch them.
Yes, I was telling people every week. Some of the voters aren't watching Missouri play because they were receiving votes, and I'm going, just rank Missouri. They're that good.
So look where they were last year, look where they are now. I think the problem that Arkansas has is that with the exception of Trevor Brazile, everybody on that team is a first-year transfer. Now some say, well, yeah, but there's some guys that played with Cal before. They didn't play much. I mean, Wagner was hurt, right? Big Z was hurt, didn't play much.
Well, yeah, and then he had the whole eligibility thing at the start of the season.
Maybe he wasn't hurt, maybe it was eligibility.
It was the eligibility thing.
But yeah, so he didn't play much. And I'm not sure that Thero played that much.
Yeah, well, Kentucky fans would tell you they wanted Cal to play him more.
Yeah.
They wanted Cal to play him a lot more than he did.
So the point is, they've got a bunch of guys that are coming in here kind of being counted on for the first time. And so the two guys that were supposed, really Brazil, I think Cal thought he would. And then the two others are Nelly Davis and Jonas Adu. Well, we know what's happened to those two guys. They were both hurt, didn't do a lot of preseason work, then kind of sat out on and off all during November and December, finally started coming around toward the end of non-conference play, but they were behind when they got in, and then I think Davis ended up with re-injuring his hand. Yeah. So there's a reason why that's happening, but the bottom line is you can't blame Cal for going out and getting two guys that he was going to build this team around, and then they're not developed because he couldn't know that.
You also can't blame him for bringing those guys on, because if you watched basketball at all, you would know how talented these guys were and ranked really highly in the portal.
Right.
I mean, Nelly Davis, everyone wants to say whatever they want to say about him, but sometimes players are a bust, and it happens. It does. But if you were to look at me and say, would you take Nelly Davis?
Would take him.
You would take him in the offseason if you looked at what he did.
He was the top shooter in the portal, and Adu was the top big man in the portal.
That's what I'm saying. They were ranked very highly.
So you can see where he thought he was taking care of some problems.
I would have said this. I looked at the guys that he was
bringing
in. And you
say, well, he should have known that it might not. What else option does he have? He inherited a team without experienced players. Just one that came back at the end.
Yeah, that he didn't know he had when he started.
And so I just don't know, they're coming up with all these explanations of he should have done this and should have done this. And what's this goober's name, this national guy that's on
Jeff Goodman?
Jeff Goodman. He's just, so here's your internet expert, your college basketball overall expert. And I watched this podcast in which he takes Cal apart and he says he's ruined Nelly Davis. He's just ruined him by not playing him. Apparently not watching the fact that the guy's hurt. He never mentioned him being hurt.
Nope.
He never mentioned the fact that they stuck him in the Florida game and played him right at 30 minutes and he didn't score a point. So what are you supposed to do there? I think he's played him enough to see, hey, is he on tonight? Is he going to score? And if he is, we'll leave him in. But if he doesn't, you just can't leave him out there. No. Now, again, he may not have a choice now. So maybe one of the only good things about Boogie being hurt is maybe John L. Davis or Nelly Davis. I'm going back and forth.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll somehow come out of this thing. The thing about Adu to me is that he didn't play. He wasn't out there for a long period of time, and I think they still haven't figured out. The other guys on this team still haven't figured out what he's really supposed to be doing. It's not him, it's them. The Arkansas led very briefly against Missouri, and what happened? They go down on their end of the floor. It looks like Brazil is going to try to go up 1-on-2 or 1-on-3 to score, and I'm thinking, this isn't going to work. And all of a sudden he just dishes it off to Jonas Adu, and he backdoors him. And I'm thinking, you ought to be doing that a lot, but they don't do it a lot.
Yeah.
Hardly none of those guys do. And so they're not using him. It's not him.
Right.
He's okay right now, but they're not using him. Now, the one good thing that came out of that Missouri game is Big Z played his best game.
Yep.
And so maybe that's the fact that he had that ankle injury and sat out. Maybe he's now okay and he's feeling comfortable, because he looked like what you'd want him to be. He was blocking shots, he was making threes, he was making twos, he was getting assists, he was doing all kinds of stuff. And when he was playing that way, they went from being down 20 to being down 10 in about 2 or 3 minutes of clock time. It was amazing.
Played well.
All of these guys that were out there on the floor at that time suddenly started looking like a totally different team. But I'm sitting there, I know, along with a lot of other Hawk fans going, okay, when does it stop? Because that's what this team has done. And so they roll along there and they get it down to 10. And then there's a foul, and Brazil goes to the line with 2 free throws, and he can cut it into single digits. An 8-point lead with 4.5 to go is doable. You can come back from that.
Yeah.
But you got to do it there.
Yeah.
And he missed both free throws, not just one, both of them.
What do you expect from your worst free throw shooter?
And it just blew up on him.
I mean.
Now, here's what some people are going to say. Well, that means that Cal's not making him work on his free throws. What has he said? Cal has said, we don't have enough time in the workouts. A lot of fans don't get this. The NCAA mandates that you only work your players 20 hours a week. That's in any sport you want to name. That's all that you can require. So in the other stuff that they're doing, they take up that 20 hours and then what do they tell them? Guys, we can't make you come back in here and work on your free throws. We can't make you come and work on your shooting. We can't make you come in here and work together on being 2 or 3 or 4 of you or whatever. We can't make you do that. But it really would be good if you could do it on your own, but we can't make you. And then it looks like to me that at least some of these guys aren't doing that.
How you get to be a better free throw shooter is just repetition and practice at it. You can up your percentages by just getting in the gym and shooting that shot. The problem is, and you'll see, coaches will tell you this, they do not, like you said, have enough time to go over that. They just don't, they're spending it on different things, and so they can't spend time on going, okay, shoot 33 free throws right now. They can't do that. And so it's on those players to get in the gym. And so coaches will tell you this. They look and they say, that free throw percentage is not so great. So how much time are you spending outside of practice in the gym and shooting and just practicing that shot on your own?
Right.
It may not be what's happening here, but I mean, you look at it and you go, the evidence is out on the court.
Coaches have to be careful. All a player would have to do is go to the proper person and saying they're trying to force me to do more than my NCAA mandate, and then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't blame that on him. We're not at these workouts, but you told me that your dad explained to you more than one time that something can be working in practice, and you're very satisfied that you've got it fixed. And then the game starts, and they're just not doing it.
And it crumbles, and it crumbles. And I always go, what happens from practice to in the game? And he goes, it's different. And you can't sometimes simulate that, especially with a team that he said has had so many injuries. He said the best way you get better at that in game situations is scrimmaging.
Yeah.
What has this team not been able to do because of injuries? Can't scrimmage. And that goes into something we're going to talk about. I think a question later on about that 9-player roster and injuries that we're going to talk about. To me, Mike, and I will say Jeff Goodman or somebody, I think it was an SEC coach in Jeff Goodman's article about Coach Cal and what's going on this year, did make a good point. They have talent on the roster. They do have talent. They're just not playing together. They aren't playing together. It's like the pieces aren't fitting.
And again, you know what causes that? You don't have enough older guys to hold the thing together.
I think older guys, and I'm going to go into it with somebody else who brings it up later on, I think leadership is a big thing.
Well, the older guys would provide
that leadership. I mean, I just don't see anybody right now who's a leader on this team.
No.
Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I just don't see it. Red Dog Razorback asked during the first practices that Coach Cal had the talk was about playing fast. The local news showed clips of the ball movement up the court without dribbling. What happened? We dribble, and then turn the ball over.
Well, I guess what he's talking about, I don't think the local news, we didn't shoot practice, so he must be talking about some of those early non-conference games.
Unless he's not watching us, but none of the local media got to shoot practice.
No, they didn't. So I think what he's talking about is he's watching games, in some of those early games where they were running more.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk, we got to have a good transition defense. You can say what you want about what you want to do. Here's what happened. As they started playing better teams, it didn't work. Better teams, first of all, you have to really trigger a good transition game. You got to be able to rebound. You've also got to be able to hit shots. Those are ways that you very quickly do things. And then you got to be able to force turnovers. And they weren't doing any of those things. So on the rare occasions when they could try to trigger a break, then the other thing they ran into is an SEC play. Almost all of these teams are very good with transition defense. they've thrown the ball away several times trying to do that long pass, here pass, there pass, because somebody will get in there and break it up and knock it away, and then you've just got a turnover. So it's not that they don't want to do it, it's that right now it's not working for them.
Yeah, and the competition, if he is really truly talking about that non-conference play, the level of competition has gotten so much harder. And so when you add better defenses in the picture, better offenses, you're going to see things that you didn't see in non-conference play show up in conference play. Hot Dogger says, I'm beginning to think that Cal might reconsider his decision to only have a 9-player roster. It seems to me that there isn't much work, seems to be that there isn't much to work with when you have injuries and illness like he's been plagued with this season.
Well, I think, he said that next year he won't do that.
He did after the Michigan game. He made a comment about, I may need to look at what I'm doing, because he made the point after that Michigan win that they've only been able to scrimmage twice, what I talked about earlier on in the show.
I want to point out that he actually does have a full roster. There are players in those spots.
Right.
What he chose to do was to concentrate his NIL money with 9. So what he could have done is given some of those guys less and maybe gotten a couple of other guys, but he might not have gotten some of the guys that he got. And so I think his decision was, okay, if I can get 9 I really want, I'll concentrate my NIL money on them. I only generally play 9 anyway.
Right.
Most, a lot of times, played 7 or 8.
Yeah. If you look around college basketball, most of the time, you will only see on that stat sheet 8 or 9 guys.
So if you're trying to put together a really talented roster with NIL money as a help, I don't think it's the only factor, but it's one of the things that helps. You got to ask yourself how thin are you going to spread that? What if offering good NIL money to 2 other players cost you a player that's better than they are? So it's not, to me, it's not cut and dried as, oh, he made a mistake here. He should have done this, he should have done that. If they didn't have these injuries, nobody would even be talking about this right now.
Right.
And I'm not sure even if he had, you're talking about taking a player that's 12th, 11th, 10th, 11th, and 12th in terms of playing ability on the roster, and you got to plug them in. You think they're going to play okay like that? How much are they going to help?
Well, look at Missouri. They play a lot
of
guys. They got depth.
That's his strategy, but that's very rare.
It is rare, but it does. There is times where you can go, okay, even if you don't play that 10th, 11th, 12th guy, when you have injuries, that's when having guys that you feel comfortable putting out in the court. Coach Cal, we've seen it. He does not feel comfortable putting anybody past that 9th guy out on the court.
Well, of course not.
Right.
But that's the way he plays.
Right. But to be fair, gonna change. I think he's gonna change that next year. Because the other reason why he said he wanted only 9 guys, I understood it early on. I said, okay, actually this kind of makes sense, because he said he didn't want to develop some of those guys, the 10th, 11th, 12th guy, for another team. He brings in someone that's talented to be the 10th guy. All they're going to do is get developed and then hit the transfer portal. Big Daddy Kane wants to know, the last time we started 0-5 in SEC play was 85-86, Coach Richardson's first year. We only won 4 conference games that season. Looking at our remaining schedule, how many wins would you predict this year?
I don't like to make predictions because here's the thing, sports is too unpredictable. And here's what happens when somebody makes a prediction. When you hear about it? When they're right. When they're wrong, they just vanish.
Or it comes back to bite them in the butt.
Most of the time they've gone away and people don't.
No,
I see it a lot. I see it a lot on the internet.
You don't follow freezing cold takes?
They will. Well, maybe if you're talking with media people, I don't know. I'm just telling you, on the internet with Arkansas fans, you can predict. You could have gone back and found somebody back in November that said, I don't think this team's going to be any good. And then he's going to be crowing about being right. But if he had been wrong, he would be vanished. You wouldn't see that.
I see a lot of cold takes come back to bite people in the butt. People find them and they put them out there. I'll just say that.
I think most of the time you get away with that stuff. But anyway, that's why I don't like to do that, because the truth is I don't have a clue. I can't sit here and predict that. They could suddenly get better. Something could change. They could win more than I think. So I'm just going to hazard a guess here.
Oh no.
And I say I think they'll win 3, but 4 at the most.
I like 3, 4 that area because you look at some games coming up. Maybe they can battle with Oklahoma this upcoming week, right? They've only won 1 game in the SEC. Maybe South Carolina, another team that's winless in the conference. Can they beat them? So there's 2 right there that could be possible wins.
Yeah, and they could pull off, the women pulled off an upset. Maybe the men could.
Can you believe we're sitting here talking right now? If you had told me back in April that the women's team would have a conference win first before the men, I would have told you were psychotic. But here we are. Pancho Dina says 18-52 at Louisville, including a 4-28 season. 4-28, and now this.
Okay, the implication there is that Cal screwed up by bringing Kenny Payne back on his staff.
Yes, because Louisville, that would make sense.
Because that's what he did at Louisville.
Yeah.
So he's basically saying, what kind of a bozo were you to bring this failed head coach and put him on your staff? Well, if you think that's what's wrong with Arkansas, let's go back and look at what Kenny Payne did in 10 years as an assistant under Cal at Kentucky. They won a national championship. They were a national runner-up. They had 2 other Final Four teams and 2 more Elite 8 teams. That's 25-5 in the NCAA tournament in 6 seasons, which is almost unprecedented.
Yeah.
During Payne's time as an assistant coach at Kentucky, the team went, get this, 29-9, 38-2, 21-12, 29-11, 38-1, 27-9, 32-5, 26-11, 30-1, and 25-6. He's not the reason why Arkansas is struggling right now.
No, he's not. I'm going to say something that may be
shocking,
mind-boggling to the fans here. I'm going to say this, Mike. Hold on to your chair. Okay, hold on. Sometimes, just sometimes, you can be a better assistant coach than a head coach.
Sometimes a lot better.
Wow, what a concept. How
about Jack Crow?
Yeah, thank you for bringing up an example. I love that people just like they latch on to things and you're like, that's not the reason at all, but okay, good for you for that. Sorry, I can't give that any more time of day here on this show. Marty Bird's Proxy asked, can you name a player, past Hog, who if the Hogs had his equivalent, they would be significantly better this year? I would take Jalen Williams. He has what this bunch desperately needs. Talented, sure, but physically and mentally tough, which has been lacking at times.
Well, you could name him. I could name several others.
I think there's a lot.
I'm not sure that there's any one player in the past that would make this team significantly better. It would make them better, but this team needs more than one good player. I don't think you can take one player and plug him in anywhere on this team and they get significantly better because there's still too many missing pieces. I'd go, Marvin Delph, going all the way back to my first years covering Arkansas, he's one of the best pure shooters I've ever seen in my life. So if you had Marvin Delph on this team, boom, 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 3-point shooters. Okay, but he didn't play a lot of defense, but he would help them with 3-point shooting. Sidney Moncrief, a tough guard both ways. He could go to the basket and score. He could shoot. He could play defense. So he'd help this team. So would Todd Day, Lee Mayberry, Oliver Miller, Corey Beck, Dwight Stewart, Scotty Thurman, and Corliss Williamson. And how about Joe Johnson, who was a great overall player, went to the NBA, was a good player in the NBA. All of those guys, any one of them you could plug in and this team would get better. But I don't think they would make it significantly better. You might need 2. If you could take 2 of these guys, then you might have something.
Or would it even be, I mean, we're talking about hypotheticals here, but genuinely, you have talented players right now. You're just not getting them to play together. So, can you add a few more talented players and say?
Because they would be more of a leader.
That's what I'm getting at.
And I don't think one leader is what this team needs. They need more than one leader.
That was what I was getting at there. I was getting at that. I agree completely. What I like about Marty Bird's Proxy, Jalen Williams, what I liked about Jalen was he was a leader. Mm-hmm. That team, when you go back to that team, they had leaders all throughout that honestly, any given night you could have a different leader.
That's right. He wasn't the only one.
He wasn't, but it was riddled with guys that took accountability, that cared. I mean, it was just, that was a special group. And honestly, you could go down the list of guys that you said, all of those guys, great leaders. And so I agree with you. I think sometimes it's not about just getting a good player, a talented player. You have talented players on this team. You can't tell me you don't. They need leadership. That's what I think. Okay, Mount Elba Hog says, Hogwild band director Jim Robkin would run around the concourse and the electricity in the building was unbelievable. We don't have Jim Robkin now, but I bet we have a student in the band who could run around in honor of him and bring the crowd to their feet.
Well, the one big mistake that Frank made when he was having Bud Walton designed, and they were going to make a transition from Barnhill to Bud Walton, and he wanted it he wanted to keep the atmosphere. It was going to be bigger, and everyone said, well, you can't do that. Barnhill is an intimate 9,000 seat thing, and it's because of the way it's constructed. It'll never be. You can't make Bud Walton at 19,500 seats the way this one was at half that size. He came pretty close. But one of the things he didn't do, and I never talked to him while he was alive, and I wish I had asked him about that. The upper concourse doesn't go all the way around. Now here's what Jim Robkin would do. And let's talk about why you need somebody doing that. Because it's happened this year. Team gets on a roll, what happens? The other coach, if he's smart, calls timeout, because what happens? It kills the crowd. They're loud, they're at a fever pitch, and then they sit there, and we do these things now where we have these contests and things like that, and they get all into that, and then when the timeout is over, they're not going bonkers again. They got to get triggered again. Well, what would happen in Barnhill was the crowd would be loud, the opposing coach would call timeout, Robkin would hit the floor, and first thing he'd do is go all the way around the lower level, right there on the court, and he'd be right in front, and he was looking for people that weren't standing up. That was his big deal. Who's not standing up? And he'd spot somebody and he'd go over and he'd be right in front of him. He'd come on. And he never got mad. He was always laughing and grinning, but they would finally get up. Okay, so when he had everybody on the lower level standing up and making noise, he'd run up one of those rows and go to the concourse and do the same thing.
I love it.
Work it around, and then he'd spot somebody way up at the top that wasn't standing up, and boom, he'd run up there and he'd get them standing up. And when he did that, people would even go more bonkers because you were trying to get everybody off their feet, up on their feet. So that when the timeout was over, they were going bonkers before anything happened. That's why that worked. The reason this won't work is because you'd have to have a guy that could do that, and you would have to have that concourse built the right way, and none of that's going to happen. Yeah. If they were responding to him and his personality, he was perfect for that job. He created that job, you know, and the only way you could make somebody do that is they watched him and figured out a way to duplicate it. Yeah. But I don't think it'd be some guy in the band.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like you said, it takes a unique personality. You'd have to hold like tryouts, right? All right, tryouts for
And it would take
role.
Somebody that knew what that was and say, well, you're close, but you got to do this, you got to do that.
In Florida, when I went to Florida, they had something similar, but it was for football games. And it was always a student that would be picked for it. And he was kind of like a yell leader is the wrong word for it, Mike. It wasn't like a yell leader, but like he was like just this, I don't even remember what they called him, but he got everyone amped up, you know? He was just like I think he was called like Mr. Florida or something, but he would just, it was awesome. He was awesome to watch on the sidelines. So I think they could.
They might could find some students and have tryouts.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
And have a student do it, and then when that student goes on, they go find another one. They could do that. But again, you would have to change the way Bud Walton is constructed, because he have to be able to get up on that second level and get those other people who jumped up. And then what do you do about the upper deck?
I don't know. That's what I was thinking about.
You'd have to run out and go up the stairs. Now, you could do that.
You have to run maybe through the sections?
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, the guy could run. He was in shape.
I know. I've seen the videos, Mike. I'm like, that's not even a real human being. And people tell me, no, that was him. So DWR says, I read that the football team will have 40 new faces on the team for 2025 and maybe more after spring practice. How can any coach be expected to be successful year after year with this much turnover?
Well, first of all, you're not taking in consideration that over 20 of those, probably 22 or 23, are incoming freshmen, and that's been going on forever. Teams have turned their roster, 1/4 of their roster over forever, because that's what happens. You have about 25 guys leave because their eligibility is up, and you bring in 25 more. So what has the portal done? Well, at Arkansas and Arkansas is not the only school that does that, but it's not uncommon to see 20 guys come in.
Yeah, welcome to the transfer portal.
So you end up with 40 guys out of the 85 maybe new faces. But let's look at what happened. Last year, they brought in, how many? 20,
last year? I think it was 22 last
22.
year, I want to say.
They brought in 22, and they went from 4 wins to 7 wins, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, if they do the same thing this year, where do they go? I don't know. But that class was not rated as high as this one
No,
is.
it wasn't. That's a really good
So
point.
for the second year in a row, they brought in around 20, 21, 22 guys. But for the second year in a row, they've kind of improved their standing in the portal class. And we'll have to wait and see. That stuff is subjective. You don't know who's going to pan out and who's not. And when Andrew Armstrong was brought in as a transfer from Texas A&M Commerce or East Commerce or whatever they call
No,
it.
it's Texas A&M Commerce.
Commerce.
You got it, yeah.
Nobody would have predicted he'd be all SEC.
No one.
You can't know what everybody's going to do. I do know that I've talked to Otis. He feels like they've really improved themselves in the tight end room. All this talk about Luke has, but the tight ends coach was not happy with any of those guys. Everybody said it was Petrino. It was your tight ends coach because they weren't doing the whole thing. They weren't blocking and they were inconsistent. And so he's got a full room now. They're new guys for the most part, but he likes them. And some people think that may end up being one of the strongest positions on the team. Let's take offensive line. They lost 3 starters and 4 overall, but they added 5, and they probably got a starter already on campus that played in the bowl game. So maybe you only need to replace 2 starters, and if you do, you got 5 guys coming in to compete for 2 spots. And then they think they have enough guys now where they don't have to play somebody an entire game. Or if somebody gets hurt, there's a backup replacement.
Yeah.
So again, right now, I think Eric Mateos feels like he's going to have a better offensive line. The secondary, you met one of them.
Oh, yeah, today. He was awesome. Caleb Wooden. You'll see it tomorrow if you watch Courtney's Community Hogs. He's going to be featured in that. But he is from Auburn, and what an awesome kid. Just talking about how great it is to be in Arkansas. He said the people here are just so nice. And he goes, I bought a mattress. He said, down the street, I bought a mattress from a guy. I said, why are you so nice to me? He goes, we take care of our own. He's just got here, guys. That's awesome.
And then you were asking him about the new secondary coach.
He said he really likes him. He said and I said, well, we haven't met him yet, so I don't know anything about it.
We haven't.
You have, we haven't. How do you like him? They said they really like him. They think Hog fans are going to like him. He said he just has so much knowledge.
But he's tough.
He's tough. He brings that NFL toughness with him, which I like to hear as well. I think DWR, he can calm down a little bit, but he does bring up something interesting with.
And that is that the portal could be reduced.
Yes. Are we gonna bring that up in NIL?
Yeah.
We're gonna bring that up. Okay.
We'll bring that up a little later.
We're gonna have 2 questions about NIL. So, okay. Pig Daddy Kane says the Department of Education last week said the plan for colleges to pay athletes directly for their NIL deals would run afoul of Title IX, and the women need the same money as men. What will that mean for the House settlement? And even though it's worded a little bit differently, we actually have another question that relates to this, so I'm going to read that as well. I Was Right is asking kind of a similar thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. 1, the big sports pay for the little sports. 2, the net of the big sports is now impacted by NIL. 3, this will negatively impact the little sports. In sum, is the impact of NIL universal across all endeavors?
Okay, first of all, they're incorrectly using NIL.
Correct.
And this is common. You said that a lady had come up to you and admitted she's not sure what all this means, revenue sharing and all that. So let me explain. It's not NIL that the Department of Education was talking about. We've talked about this plan, this revenue sharing plan that's being worked on by a lot of people behind the scenes. Tom Tuberville, who was a longtime college football coach, is kind of heading it up in the Senate, and then he's trying to push it through in both houses. They're going to try to do legislation on this, and I think they'll be successful. The Department of Education under Joe Biden had announced sometime in the last few days that they felt like that this revenue sharing should be done equally between men and women. Okay, I don't think that's going to fly with these people because, and let me try to explain this. What they're doing, this new thing, revenue sharing, is an attempt to replicate what goes on in the NFL, the NFL model, because they believe that what's going on right now is a really weird version of the NFL with no rules, and the NFL has rules.
Right.
So the first thing that they want to do is they wanted to separate paying players to play athletics, whatever sport you want to do, and paying them to compete as athletes, separate that from endorsement deals, because you have that in the NFL. If I am Patrick Mahomes,
correct,
and I got a contract with the Kansas City Chiefs and it's running out, I could go somewhere else. So I get my agent and they sit down with the management of the Chiefs and they say, okay, what is your value to our franchise? Are you worth $30 million a year, $40 million a year, whatever it is, and they eventually come to an agreement on what you're worth.
Yeah.
So that is sort of what they want to do now with these revenue sharing payments. You will get paid directly by the school. It will come from their athletic budget.
Which they couldn't have done before.
Which they couldn't do before.
Yeah.
So they want to separate paying players to compete with NIL. So what will NIL be? They say that NIL will turn into what it is in the pros, an actual endorsement where somebody says, hey, if you come over here and endorse my product, I'll pay you this, but hopefully you'll make me some money here. I'm not just doing it for...
Hopefully, yeah.
I'm not just doing it for... They want to eliminate boosters giving NIL money just to give players money.
Correct, yeah.
They want it to be a true NIL, and that's going to be difficult, but they think they can make that work. So that's where the difference is. That's what they want to change. Now, I will say this about the Department of Education. It changed, boing, today. You did have a Democrat administration in charge of this. Now you got a Republican administration in charge of it. And gee, what is Donald Trump and Tom Tuberville? They're both Republicans. So it would seem that they're probably going to be on the same page on this. And if they are, then they'll proceed with this notion that, and let me tell you why I think it may work. Because I've been told what's going on behind the scenes. Let's talk about Title IX. Title IX would not exist. These Title IX scholarships, that is scholarships for women's sports and even scholarships for the so-called men Olympic sports or spring sports, the ones that run a deficit, don't pay for themselves, not only don't pay for themselves, they run a deficit. Those scholarships would not exist if college football and basketball teams if the athletic departments hadn't been taking football and basketball revenue and giving them that money.
Correct, yeah.
So it's not like they're taking stuff away from them, just going, we're greedy, we're not helping you. They've been helping them all along. You got a scholarship. It's worth $50,000. Room, board. They give them about $1,000 a month spending money. You have all of that. You're not without anything, you're with a lot. But should we continue to take more of what we generate that generates money for this school and take it and give it to you and hurt the ability to generate money through football and basketball? That doesn't make good business sense. You still want your revenue producers to produce revenue. Well, if you start taking away their ability to produce revenue so you can siphon it off and give it to a sport that doesn't produce revenue, that runs a deficit, you're not being very smart business-wise. So I think that's why they think this will work.
They think it'll work, but they did say, and I was reading some stuff on this, and from one of the biggest NIL lawyers in the entire country, who said, just because if they reverse it, doesn't mean that you're not going to see a bunch of Title IX lawsuits.
Yeah, you could get lawsuits.
You're going to get a ton of lawsuits.
But I think they believe that when these suits come up, that's the point that's going to be emphasized. Yeah. Hey, we're already giving them this money.
And we'll see what happens moving forward with those
lawsuits. It almost reminds me of the WNBA, which we know basically has existed for years because the NBA has funded it, right? So what if the WNBA said, we got to have more of your money. Give us more. You got to give us half of what you have. You think they would do that? Yeah. Give them half of everything they generate?
No, but I see your point exactly. It's just what will legislation decide? What will the courts decide, on what happens. That's what I'm interested to know, because that's what is the unknown about this. Will they take that side, or will they say, no, we now have to put NIL as a part of Title IX? Because if you really look at the language of Title IX, you're right. Why it was created was to create that the balance
of scholarships.
The balance of scholarships, exactly. But does that, because it involves money and because it involves that, there's this little gray area. And there are some lawyers that think they could win Title IX lawsuits because they think they can argue about that gray area. And so this will be really interesting moving forward. I think it'll be something that we need to watch very, very closely. And then in April, we'll find out if revenue sharing. Apparently, April is when we're supposed to find out when they're going to vote on it.
This could affect a lot of things. It could affect Cal's ability to bring in guys out of the portal.
I know, it's going to be crazy.
Could affect Arkansas. They want to get 2 or 3 more players this spring and maybe won't be able to do it.
We'll see what happens. WV Hog fans asked, and this is our final question of the show, what are your thoughts on Jordan Weber participating on a survival reality show, having to share her experience with Larry Nassar and showing her strengths and weaknesses as an individual?
Okay, I plead guilty. I never watch reality shows.
Mike, you didn't watch it?
No, when they first started, what was the first reality show? Survivor or some crazy thing?
Well, I don't know.
Whatever it was called, the very first one. I looked at that and I went, I don't care about that, because I felt like it was rigged. It was staged. It wasn't real.
Well, a lot of them are rigged. A lot of them
wasn't
create the moments.
The only reality show I ever liked was one in which, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was one where people took their like their old cool things. Like I have this old refrigerator.
Wait, like it's a.
And the guy would take it and fix it up.
Yes,
and
I know what you're talking about.
And he had this goofy son that he was always chewing him out.
Yes, what is it called? Oh my gosh, someone's going to tell us in the comments.
I don't know, but anyway, his goofy son he'd have arguments with his goofy son because he'd be acting like he didn't know how to do this, and he was going, "What's the matter with you? You know, we do this and that." But they would take like a guy would have an old Schwinn bicycle, and then they would just completely restore it, and it would be just like it was brand new.
Yes, and I know it. I watched it. Oh my gosh,
it was so cool, and I liked that. And I realized that they staged some of this stuff with his goofy son and all that. I didn't care because I wasn't so much in with that, whatever that thing is, with that family in the pawn shop. That was a little.
Oh, Pawn Stars?
Yeah, that was a little too much. But I did like the one, and that's the only one I ever watched. So I'm not about to watch this, whatever it was, but it does.
Fox Special Forces.
But it does have a local celebrity in it, and you did watch it, so you tell us what it was.
It actually had quite a few celebrities in it.
But locally.
Well, locally it had Jordan Weber in it,
right?
And then that's Arkansas's head gymnastics coach, for anybody who doesn't know who Jordan Weber is. I think everyone who watches this show does. So basically, breaking it down for you, for anybody who doesn't know, you can go watch it on Hulu right now. They re-air the episodes on Hulu if you have Hulu, and that's where I watched the first one. But what they do is they basically take celebrities through a special forces like boot camp, and they do it for 10 days, I believe it is, and it's just, they make them do challenges that you would make Marines do, that you make, Army guys, like, it's just insane what they take them through. I mean, the first episode has them jumping from a moving boat, from a moving watercraft onto a moving helicopter. That was the first challenge. Insane. So Jordan Weber's on it, and so there's other stars on it. Cam Newton is on it.
I'm thinking if I'm Hunter Yurchek, I don't want my gymnastics coach doing that.
Well, here's the thing. So I asked Jordan Weber about it. I said, because it's on our network, Fox. We're, if you guys don't know, we're also on the local Fox here. So that's a shameless plug to go watch that show and see your Pig Trail Nation reports. But I asked her about it because it's on our network. And she said, look, they called me up. It was after the season. Nothing was going on. They called me up and said, do you want to be a part of this? And she was like, I think it would be really cool. I think it would really be a test, and a test of my strength.
Yeah, it could help recruiting.
And it could help, yeah. You're on a national TV show,
sure.
Definitely, with like people like Cam Newton and Christy Carlson Romano, and I'm trying to think of some of the other stars on it. Caitlyn Jenner's son, Brody Jenner.
Yeah.
Brody Jenner, thank you, Alyssa. He's on it. And so there's a lot of famous people on it, and also Jordan Weber. And she told me, she was like, look, I'm gonna tell you something honestly. I am not good in the water. I'm not. And she said that very clear when we talked about it. And I went, what does she mean by that? What is like, I'm not good in the water? Well, a lot of the challenges are water challenges.
Right.
And so in the first episode, she really, really struggles with the water challenges. And she goes over and she has to talk to them. And, you know, they have to coach her and train her and get her back into the challenge. And the second episode, I won't tell you what happens. Go watch it. You know, there you go. I'm doing my thing for Fox. But you can kind of see the struggles that she's dealing with. And so I thought it was really awesome that she went and did the show. She also told me that it's helped make her a better coach.
Okay.
She said my athletes have seen me. They've seen me go through this. And what it's done is just show me, like, look, I'm getting out there. I'm doing something that makes me so uncomfortable. So when I ask you to do something uncomfortable, you can do it too. And I just thought that was a really good message. She was awesome. I'll tell you this, jumping onto a moving helicopter from a moving watercraft, I couldn't do that.
No, that's really weird.
That's really weird, Mike. That's just one of the challenges. The other one was they were locked in a sinking boat and they had to unlock a box and the watercraft was sinking, and so you had to do it, but you had to go under the boat, and it was...
Nope, not doing any of that stuff.
It was really tough. Look, if you're interested in watching those episodes...
Not even watching it. Too spooky.
Too spooky?
Yeah, I don't want to watch somebody underwater in a boat trying to unlock something.
I mean, I'm telling you, they can't fake what they were doing with those challenges. Those were hard challenges, and I commend every single celebrity that goes on that show and tries to do it. Because you see how many drop out. There was like 5 that dropped out in that first episode.
Right.
5. They
were
just couldn't
smart.
do it. Well, they just couldn't do it.
No, they were smart.
Okay, all right. They just couldn't do it. I don't think the average person can do what they were asking. So shout out to Coach Weber. You were awesome. I love that she did that show. And if you want to go watch it, it's on Hulu right now. It airs on Fox as well on, I think, Tuesday night. So anyways.
Hey, do you think when we do the next week's show, we'll have a basketball win?
Do I think?
We could get one. 2 more games, right?
Yep. Georgia, who's been playing really, really, really well.
I know.
And then Oklahoma, who hasn't been playing well, but did pick up an SEC win. So
But they're
doing better
they're
than
both
Arkansas.
at Bud Walton. Now, the big question is, how many show up?
that is a true question.
How many
there.
people stay away?
Well, your team's 0-5 in SEC play. I think there's some people
They
who
need
won't
your
show
help.
up. They need your help. There you go. Mike Irwin says they need your help. We'll see what happens on the show, and we'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.